So welcome everyone, and thanks for joining today. We aim to keep this webinar within an hour, and we'll do our presentations the first 30 minutes and leave the rest for Q&A. If you have any questions in the meantime, please pop them into the chat and they'll be collected and addressed later. No sudden end of the call though, so no worries. If the conversation is too interesting and worth some extra time, we can linger a bit longer. But before diving into the Edible project itself, is just a little introduction to our group. My name is Susanna. I am a member of Wexford Environmental Network, which is a small group of people that you can see on the screen from different areas in County Wexford. We share a passion for the environment and the urge to act to protect it. We are part of the local environmental network, which were formed under the umbrella of the Irish Environmental Network. Since we started back in 2020, we have participated to campaigns and actions like the global climate strikes organized by the Friday for Future movement, or joined the Extinction Rebellion at Stop Climate Chaos, contacting TDs to lobby for faster climate action. And we also organized online webinars and in-person meetings like climate cafes that in different locations around the county. That in the attempt to bring people together around the need to act against climate change and biodiversity loss. It wasn't too long after we formed that we started thinking about creating an opportunity for people in the different communities to actually do something concrete about it all, and decided to focus on our food system, a topic that ultimately connects a lot of dots in relation to the climate and biodiversity crisis. Like, for example, the use of chemicals throughout the whole chain of production and distribution, really harmful to our environment and ourselves. Or like the fact that we depend so much from import, even on produce that we could grow ourselves, but that is not economically convenient for our farmers to switch to, meaning we still keep our overall land usage for cattle and dairy, for grazing and tillage, the business as usual that evidently brought us where we are now, with native forests down to 1% and at our lowest point in terms of species of plants and animals in our landscapes. So to bring awareness to this connection in a simple and effective way, we created the Invite project, Edible Network, Villages and Towns Area, now renamed Edible Towns Network to make it easier, which really is a simple invitation to rethink and restyle in edible fashion the unused areas around where we live. The idea is basically to restore the land around villages and towns, stop using herbicides and pesticides, and invite more life in those manicured and pristine look lawns scattered all over towns and villages. In fact, adding edibles means no need to spray chemicals, have more flowers for insect pollinators, boost our resilience and confidence that we can actually look after at least a part of what we eat, and in the process really experience what it takes to grow food season after season, but that we find so easily available in shops all year round. So to make those connections and to become more responsible consumers. Edible gardens can happen in many forms. It really is a matter of how much of your free time you want to dedicate to it. For example, establishing a simple herb patch and planting some fruit trees and bushes in a housing estate might be a once-off gig for a relatively small group of people. Or it can be a proper full-on vegetable garden with beds and tunnels, if enough people are happy to look after this, like it happens already in schools, for example. But it can also be sowing wildflowers where it doesn't need to be a mud lawn, less work, less expenses, and more insect pollinators. So win-win-win. And what to do is entirely up to the local people who will manage the area. And probably the one thing to be most mindful about is how to get water, especially for vegetable growing. But let's be creative. And if no tap is available, maybe a rainwater collector could be installed. Many options. So on the practical side, the most frequent questions that we get are we actually allowed to do this, and who's going to pay for it? So, well, here are some of ideas that at least work for us. First of all, get the hands and form a group. There's no point in having all the money in the world if you don't have people to move whatever you buy with that money. So 4 or 5 people is a nice small number to start with, but as we'll see later, 2 will do as well. So organize a climate cafe, invite other community groups, see if you can team up with the local tidy towns or men and women shed, especially if the area you're looking at is in a public area space. And also check with your local volunteer center. There's always the possibility of somebody looking for something like that. So then make some noise and find consensus. So check if it is okay to go ahead with as many people as you can, talk about it. And even if they don't want to get involved in the action straight away or ever, it may be your neighbors, fellow parents in your child's school, other team members of your sport club. Not everyone has to do it, but the more people on board, the better. And help can come in many ways. Approval is definitely one of them. Third, now that you have all that you really need, just ask the owner, the principal, the manager, the priest, the chairperson, the council, whoever is in charge of that place. Organize a chat or a walk, bring a sketch if you can of what it could be, the vision of what you have, and show that you have a number of people backing the idea up. And just make sure public liability is covered, and we'll go through this later on. Fourth, start gather the materials you may need. And we found that often people that agree to get involved may already have some extra seeds, trays, pots, are happy to bring their own tools and also chip in a few euros in case we need to buy some bag compost or whatever else, at least to start with. Because if you need more, say you want to build beds or buy even a greenhouse, well, maybe check if the group that you're contacting has any funding available. Check if there is options of grants available to those groups. Again, team up with your local men and women shed for help in actually making what you need. Or go to the local development office. We found it really, really helpful. And again, the council, they help as well. Also, the usual fundraisers are always a good way to get people together. So once you have all this, still you may feel that we don't know enough to start growing vegetables or flowers. We've never done it before. So how do we do it? Well, there is plenty of knowledge around us. It's surprising, really. But sometimes what it takes is to ask around. Gardeners, you'll find they're everywhere. And if you're lucky enough to have a community garden or allotments close to where you live, you can easily ask for advice there. People are really happy to share their knowledge. And also people working in garden centers are generally very helpful too. And of course, our network, we can share our sowing plans that we are doing in the different edible gardens that we started. And don't forget that the seed packets have most of the info you really need to grow a particular type of plant. Plus, you can find online tutorials and websites with plenty of suggestions and examples. The risk is to really get hooked. And if so, there are courses for organic horticulture that you can do in person or online. And you may become the expert, the real expert, and it'll be easier then to help others to start their own projects. So some things will work straight away, while others won't. It might take a few trials, but it's all part of the process. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? Spoiler alert, slugs and caterpillars. I'm sure we all had that experience. Or vandals. Well, that depends really on where the edible garden is located. And according to that, there might be episodes of littering and random damage. But unfortunately, this is unpredictable. So far, thankfully, we didn't suffer any serious problem. And to be honest, it seems that it is less tempting to trash edible gardens because they already look a little messy or a lot messy, rather than a pristine lawn and flower beds, all tidy and beautiful. Also adding signs like picking is allowed helps, especially knowing that the project is for the entire community rather than just the few people that are looking after it. That helps as well. So just to go through a few of the edible gardens we started, I'll give you some examples. So here there is a list of our most successful. Our pilot project in Educate Together National School in Gori, community garden at the Men's Sheds Quarter in Ballycanoe, an edible corner at the Heritage Orchard in Gori, and another primary school in the village of Ferns, and the revamp of 10 raised beds in Wexford Town. So the very first project started in the primary school where my children go. I got together with a few parents to discuss the opportunity. One of them is Claire. Drew a few sketches, contacted the PDA and the principal. We had a walk around with them and a few members of the network. Natasha was there too. And some were expert in garden design, permaculture and horticulture. And so we got the idea approved this way. We showed sketches and that was very helpful. Together with the teachers, then we worked out a system to implement this activity in the normal school timetable for all 400 children. So now a core group of parent volunteers organizes the actions and communications. And every Friday we're out with the children. Each class comes out on a rota basis every 3 weeks for around 30 minutes in which they carry out whatever is needed in their assigned zone. With the school PDA funding, plus a fundraiser, we got the children to bag and sell some seeds. We purchased a greenhouse where they have been growing summer crops ever since. Amongst the things that the children do, they carry out soil tests, add amendments, save seeds, sow, transplant, stake, pick, and finally eat. So it really is a fantastic opportunity for young children to experience firsthand what it takes to grow food and for them to make that connection with our food system and ultimately understand the impact it has on the one planet we live on. We talk about sustainability, learn how to compost, collect rainwater, how to recycle materials, anything that we can think of. In fact, the project can include any number of related activities. For example, land art. We have a mother who comes and creates nature mandalas with the children. And last May, the children created a colorful graffiti and picked a fitting quote to remind us all that if you look after the land will look after you. And also it can link with other groups and projects. For example, we planted nearly 200 native trees together with the people from Seal Rescue Ireland, connecting to their own project. Last but not least, the children get to taste the freshest produce throughout the seasons, and this often results in them trying new foods that might have been refused at home. We got many incredulous parents telling us their children now happily graze on salads and cucumbers. Last September, we opened by offering all 400 children a taste of bruschetta, made with their very own garlic and tomatoes grown in school, and it was indeed a great success. So we just started back yesterday, actually. So with new seeds for the greenhouse, but also for a plant sale that we are planning to have at some point in May, which will be open to the whole community, like most of our sustainable events. So that is not just a compartment event for the school, but is open to everybody. So yeah, this project in particular certainly requires a good bit of work because it's an ongoing thing. It's not always easy to find volunteers that frequently, but so far we have managed it. We are in the third year now, nearly finished. And we find children really, really respond very well to growing to it. Like growing food is a brilliant educational tool. So just quickly going through the other existing edible projects. This is again us in Gori Town, where together with the local Tidy Down group, we planted a pollinator-friendly area. This time we used funding that the council was offering to Tidy Down groups and the like for this very purpose. So we got a call to help with picking the plants to add onto this orchard. And we included herbs and other edible shrubs that are now there available to people passing by. And it's right beside this beautiful heritage orchard that the Tidy Down group had planted many years ago. It's really worth a visit if you're ever down there. Then there is a primary school in Ferns that had contacted me through another connection to the local Tidy Towns. I met the teacher and the principal, and we organized another meeting with a bunch of parents, grandparents, happy to volunteer. And yeah, off they went, started their own version of the Edible School project. So I think they're also about to start back now. So finally, last year in March and April 2023, we organized 2 events to initiate another edible project at the Chamber of Commerce Car Park in Wexford Town. And this is my part done, so I leave you with Tina, who is the main organizer for this project, and we'll go through how we made that happen and where they are right now. So thank you, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Susanna. Can I get my first?
There you go.
Thank you very much. So our project has been running for just over a year at 10 raised beds at the Wexford Chamber of Commerce car park. So I don't know if any of you live in Wexford town, but you might have passed through that area. It was originally a community DIY growing project, but in recent years it was left idle. So the ETN hatched a plan to regenerate the beds and use it again as a community garden open to the public, and an outdoor classroom for local schools. So it was an ETN project. Susanna started it up and gave us full support for a long time until the planting events. And then I and a few other core volunteers took over the running of it. So what we learned our first year, because we've been, running since November 2022, just on the slide there, I've kind of color coded it to give you an idea of what kind of seasons different aspects kind of kicked in. And you can see the blue is winter, and you can see an awful lot of the doing actually is in winter because a lot of the planning. So when you are actually thinking of setting something up, the winter is actually a great time to sit back and try and plan it out ahead of time, because you kind of work back. So we had because this was an existing project, it was possibly easier for us to pick up the threads and see who had been involved in the original project and if they wanted to be involved in the revamping of it. So we met Tidy Towns to find out the history and who'd been involved again, and contacted them. The men's shed had built the beds originally, and they were happy to fix up the compost area there, and the Tidy Towns group helped clear the overgrowth. And we also contacted and somebody we found extremely helpful and we'd really recommend as well was the local development officer. Gave us a lot of guidance and support through the kind of aspects of governance, also material support, things like that. So then we, to kind of gather interest of volunteers, took a stand at the Volunteer Expo in Wexford Town in the Talbot Hotel in January, and also contacted Wexford Volunteer Centre, and then invited local community groups to get involved, and then contacted the schools all around Wexford Town to see which ones might be interested in the project. We got 2 yeses back, and that was Selster College and Mercy Primary School. So we went into the schools with little seed propagating kits, the compost, the seed trays, showed the kids how to plant the seeds, and then they minded the seeds in the classroom for a few weeks until the planting, so that they could bring the seedlings to the plantings. This stage, we had huge support from ETN, and I presume that you would get the same, even if you were starting your own project and you reached out. It was Susanna guided us on an awful lot of things that we wouldn't have known ourselves, like, what seeds were going to grow easily for the kids, and the timing of the seedlings being at the right stage for getting in there to plant them. She worked out the rotational plan for our veggie beds and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of support was vital. We wouldn't have the confidence to do it without that. So it was a great support. So do reach out if you're starting. You'll get that kind of support, and ongoing actually as well. The other thing Susanna suggested, which was really useful, was a WhatsApp group, which was really good for maintaining interest, involvement, enthusiasm. And also when you're down the beds, what's happening new is great, because you had videos, you had photographs, you had people sticking things up, like recipes for something's being harvested, here's a recipe, different volunteers. And it also meant every volunteer could kind of have an input as well. It wasn't just the organizers, so it worked very well that way. So Susanna, can we just have the little planting slide there? Yeah.
this one?
So the planting, yeah, thank you. The planting event itself went really well, and it was very good for building momentum of interest. We managed to get the help of some wonderful people who we reached out to, obviously, and again, the advice would be cheeky and ask, because even if somebody's very high profile, often they're really enthusiastic about this kind of thing and willing to help. We got Mary Reynolds, who is she won the Chelsea flower show or garden show or whatever 1 year. She's really high profile, but she's really into biodiversity and wilding. So she came, gave a talk. Head gardener of Johnstown Castle, foraging expert Dwyer, and plant biologist Cara Delia Setu. So all of these really wonderful experts were there giving workshops and talks, totally off their own bat, totally for free. So definitely kind of get stuck in there asking, because you don't ask, you don't get. And yeah, it was very successful. We gathered a lot more volunteers that way. A lot more people signed up to the WhatsApp group. We had a local paper cover it, and we had councillors come who gave us discretionary funding. Again, that's something I'll talk about later, but that's really useful, because obviously it gives you just that little bit of money for tools and seeds and compost, things like that. So can we go back to the other slide, Susanna? Sorry, this is my fault for not having
previous
technology.
one.
Just to the original one again.
Yeah.
Thanks. So then it kind of slowed down into kind of a rota of maintenance of the beds. We just had a few core volunteers. We still had community groups coming. We had the schools, particularly Salesforce groups, came and were involved in kind of seed saving, weeding, kind of came, harvested a few things. And it was a really nice interaction. And then during Climate Week, for instance, they came and helped us plant a winter bed of garlic and onions, and planted some seeds, wildflower seeds, in a particular grass beside the beds. Anyway, so that was all good. Just one other thing I'd mention about it, the Tidy Towns thing had to do with when the project is on public ground, and one of the issues we had was with insurance. This wouldn't, every project is different. I don't think this would be an issue with all projects, but if it is an issue, the way we overcame it was to become a branch of Tidy Towns. So the insurance and the goodness and all those kind of headaches were taken over. You could use another group, you could do a men's women's shed, something like that, but you know, we're still working on the parameters of that, but it seems to have overcome that problem, which, you know, it was a problem for a while there. So just for future plans, Susanna, we have the little plan of
yeah.
Thanks. So this is a plan of what we, you know, you see the orange area there is the raised beds that we're planting at the moment, but there's a large green strip beside it, and we're planning to put in some fruit trees and fruit bushes and a little wilding area and things like that. So that's our plan for next year. So this winter we are looking into more serious kind of funding. So we've been kind of working on grants. So if you want to have any questions, if you have any questions about working that kind of thing, we're in the middle of that. So we can tell you what we know so far from it. We sectioned it off into different areas, as you can see. We're planning to take on the 2 areas 3 and 4 this year coming. We're also hoping to run a sustainable gardening course, and again we've been looking for funding for that. And the next thing, I suppose, the learnings would be really, apart from thinking seasonally, think ahead, would be walk before you can run. There's another slide there, but it doesn't matter terribly. You know, if you ask, just bear in mind how big of a project you want, and, you know, by all means have ambition, but like if you feel you've got fewer volunteers and you're stretching them, then, and stretching yourself, if you feel like you're overreaching, pull back a little bit, because you need to sustain it in the long term, and people can sometimes get a bit fed up if they get too much to take on. So I think it's good to just kind of go with the rhythm of how you feel it is going. And obviously, when you're starting something out, mistakes will be made, disappointments are inevitable. Some seeds won't take, some volunteers will leave, some plants will get knocked over. You just, it's just chalk it up to experience. You adapt, you learn, and some people come back. Then it's just there's a rhythm, and you also get surprises, pleasant surprises. How much people actually give for free, how much advice they give, how much they give of their time, of material things, and the herbs did really well. The amount of people who went by and said how much they loved the space the way it was, the unexpected wildflowers, because we've been very careful to try and keep all the wildflowers that we could. Biodiversity was a big aspect of it. It wasn't just growing of food, So all of these were lovely things. So if we can bounce on then to I suppose I just threw down the kind of people we could collaborate with, support and collaboration, inspiration. I kind of mentioned a lot of them. Obviously the ETN, particularly with organizational stuff. Susanna's been through it all before. She knows it like the back of her hand. Or these things. And also horticultural knowledge is great help just in terms of confidence boosting, and then you can run off on your own and do whatever, but it's really, really good to have that backup and to be part of a support network like that. The Men's Shed were great. So, if there are any other groups like Men's Shed, Tidy Towns kind of thing, if you can kind of just reach out and see how supported they are. We found them just moral support as well, because it's another group, kind of small group, and kind of like they're right in red and square beside us. They were a great help. And again, local development officer, apart from ETN, if there's one person you contact, that would be the person I would contact. We got information from Sandra, we got advice, we got support. She linked us with lots of community groups. Also, the local development office, they don't offer funding, but they offer you material goods. So say you're looking for a particular, we were looking for compost. They gave us a ton of compost. So they get the thing, they don't give you the money for it. So, but definitely worth approaching with that. I've put in here a biodiversity officer. We haven't got one yet in Wexford, but there's one on the way. So certainly somebody to look up maybe in the future. And the climate action officer, again, he's just bedding in. So I'm thinking in the future, he might be a great contact in the future, but he's just kind of finding his way, I think, at the moment. Existing community gardens allotments and things like that. There's Enniscorthy allotments. They were giving out free seeds last year. And I'm not sure if they still are, Susanna, but Castlebridge Community Garden, I found Mary Hamilton was very open, the founder, to giving us advice if we're looking for it. I kind of just attached this link to this. It's just all these little videos of different community gardens around Wexford, and I found it quite inspirational. It's a couple of years old at this stage, but it's still good. And it also, there may be some that you're not aware of that are right nearby and that you could actually tap into, ask for advice and things like that. Funding, really, when you're starting out, grants and things, you have to, there's a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of getting a bank account, getting governance, things like that. The best thing is to start off trying to source things for free. Ask, like I say, the speakers, collaborating groups. Go to a stables for some manure. Go to tree surgeon for some bark mulch, and sometimes people will offer these things anyway. And also, Susanna at the ETN was at Kilnairn Festival and had the idea to put some herbs and things out on the stall there. And I think that's a great way to just kind of bring in some small funds as you go along, and it's also raising awareness of the project. And the other thing I'd raise there on that particular slide is, or kind of highlight, is the local councillors' discretionary funds. I mentioned that before. That is a really good, you can just directly approach your councillor and you don't have to have all of these things. You can run it. We actually got funds from 2 councillors, a couple of £100 each last year. That was all our funds last year. That ran our whole project. And we ran it through the Tidy Towns bank account. Just they did that for us. We weren't connected with them at that stage. They were just so people are very kind. But that just kept us going and got us some essential tools and our compost and things like that. So that worked very well. The grants and stuff, I think I'm probably 100 years over time here. So if you have any questions about that and you would like to go into that, but that's probably something you'd be doing on your second year or third year, maybe looking into that. Initially, I'd probably I'd go for those other things that I mentioned. And climate funding I put down there because we were very hopeful for that, but it seems to be for large capital projects at the moment. Again, that might change. But I think that's probably all I got for now. If you want to finish up there, Susanna.
Thanks, Tina. That was perfect. Well, just to say that our intention with this webinar was to show how we started and the different possibilities and options that people might have. So our hope is obviously more people taking inspiration from this and starting their own little projects. And I think that is pretty much all. I have a slide here with some information and resources links that I can keep on while we do the question and answer section. So we'll stop the recording. Claire, please. And thank you so much.